first broadcast came through at 3:17 a.m., a cheerful weather report from a town that hadn't existed for over 40 years. Perdition's sound was wiped off the map in 1978, when a sudden, unexplained electrical storm caused every living thing within its borders to simply vanish. Yet here was the voice of its long-dead radio host, Lester Green, inviting listeners to a Founders Day dance that never happened. The recordings that followed weren't just echoes of the past. They were new transmissions, describing events in real time. Listeners reported the air around their radios turning frigid and carrying the faint, coppery scent of ozone and old blood. Then, the broadcasts changed. The cheerful host's voice would crack, replaced by wet, ragged whispers and the sound of something heavy being dragged across a wooden floor. The final transmission wasn't a voice at all, but a low, resonant hum that vibrated in the bones of anyone who heard it, followed by a single, clear sentence. "We're waiting for you at the dance. We hope to see you all there." The audio cuts to dead air, then erupts into a burst of screaming static. A single line of white text materializes in the darkness. This broadcast was recorded at 3:17 a.m. last Tuesday. The signal originated from a point 200 miles off the coast of Oregon. The static vanished, leaving an unsettling void where sound should have been. A metallic scent, like old pennies and ozone, began to permeate the stale air. The faint, rhythmic drip of water from a forgotten tap became the only heartbeat in the room. A sudden, sticky coldness seeped through the floorboards, as if the foundation itself was weeping. John Miller, a signal engineer from Portland, hunched over his desk in the dim glow of monitors. His obsession was DXing, scanning the static for distant, elusive broadcasts from the fringes of the airwave. He'd found Spanish sermons from Mexico, trucker chatter from the Midwest. But one night, he tuned into something else, and that was Hank Williams for you. A little slice of heaven on a Thursday night. This is Sam Clayton, your voice in the dark, on 660 AM KPSD, broadcasting from the heart of Perdition Sound, Washington. Perdition Sound appeared on no map John could find, absent from every database he checked. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like old iron. A low, rhythmic dripping echoed from somewhere unseen, each drop measured and deliberate. His breath hitched as a primal dread took hold. This place wasn't meant to be found. He'd assumed it was just some tiny, unincorporated town, maybe a pirate radio station with a quirky gimmick. But the signal was unnervingly powerful, piercing the static with a crystal clarity that felt invasive. And the program, it wasn't just old, it was from another time. A broadcast that shouldn't exist. A voice crackled through, announcing a news bulletin about an event that hadn't happened for decades. On screen, John's notes revealed a meticulously preserved time capsule. The radio station didn't just play old songs. It recreated an entire vanished era. Every advertisement, every weather bulletin, every crackling broadcast was perfectly period authentic. It was a self-contained world, a hauntingly complete slice of 1950s Americana, broadcasting endlessly into the void. John's obsession deepened. A fixation he confessed to Sarah. She brought him coffee, her smile strained with concern. A faint scent of ozone lingered in the air, out of place in the dusty room. On the tape, her voice echoed, "It's charming, honey, but it's just a show." The tape hissed with the sound of men pretending to be something they weren't. A hollow performance, but John's voice cut through, tense and insistent. "No, Sarah, listen past them. You can hear the sea, the real, wet crash of waves," he whispered, the damp, salt air smell of it almost palpable. Underneath the fake laughter, real people. The weather reports are hyper-local, warning of creeping fogs that cling to the skin like damp wool. Then, at exactly 10 o'clock, the low groan of a foghorn echoes from the unseen harbor. This isn't a recording playing on a loop for the tourists. Someone, or something, is out there in the murk, sounding that horn live. With meticulous precision, John triangulated the signal's origin. The coordinates didn't point to Washington, but to a desolate patch of open ocean. A metallic scent of ozone clung to the air as his equipment hummed with impossible data. The realization settled in his gut like a cold, dense weight. That's when the messages started, an impossibility for a standard AM station. Through the speaker, a broadcast crackles to life. Sam's voice is cheerful, but underneath it, the ever-present hum grows louder, thick with static. A metallic scent, like ozone after a storm, seems to seep from the device. And a special shout-out tonight, Sam announces, his tone unnervingly bright, to our new friend, listening in from Portland. The voice on the radio crackled again. "Wave to us, John. We can see your light on it." His breath hitched, the only sound in the thick, still air. A metallic tang, like ozone after a storm, pricked at the back of his throat. Coincidence, he thought. A fragile hope crumbling in the sudden, profound quiet. It was a desperate reach. He called Mike, his fellow radio enthusiast. Mike answered from his own cluttered ham shack, his voice laced with weary skepticism. Through the static of the recording, his dismissal was absolute. "Dude, you're losing it. It's just a community theater project with a strong transmitter." But John couldn't let it go. He began documenting everything, obsessively capturing every moment. Then one night, during the static-filled offshore fishing report, It happened. Through the crackling broadcast, a voice emerged, not from the radio, but from somewhere much closer in the darkroom. The broadcast crackled with jaunty maritime music. But beneath it, Sam's voice grew distant, as if he'd stepped away from the mic. A faint, rhythmic sound emerged through the static. A wet, dragging thump that seemed to echo from somewhere impossibly. Then, a guttural whisper cut through, carrying the scent of ozone and brine. Cold here, so deep. The lights went out. Sam's voice suddenly returned, too bright and forced, as he urged listeners to keep their boats ashore. A warning that felt chillingly inadequate. The fog thickened, swallowing the path behind him, making retreat impossible. He replayed the segment, his knuckles white on the mouse, the air tasting of damp earth and static. As he enhanced the audio, a low-frequency hum emerged, vibrating through the desk and into his bones. Then, beneath the hum, a wet, rhythmic scratching began, as if something was dragging itself closer through the mud outside. The whisper sharpened into clarity, thick with despair. John had finally unearthed a historical record. It wasn't about the place, Perdition Sound, but the ship that vanished there in 1954. The SS Perdition. No distress call, no wreckage ever found. Just gone. 312 souls. The next broadcast was different. The music was slower. It dragged, warped, as if the notes themselves were drowning. Sam's voice had lost its warmth, grown weary and hollow. It's a quiet night in Perdition Sound. The air hangs thick and still, carrying the faint, briny scent of decay from the shore. Always is, lately. We miss the sun, truly. If anyone can hear this, don't look at the mist. It looks back. John methodically packed a duffel bag, his movements precise and detached. Sarah stood in the doorway, her knuckles white as she gripped the frame.
Her voice trembled as she spoke, the words laced with a growing terror. You're chartering a boat to hunt a phantom broadcast? This obsession has become something dangerous. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and damp earth. His voice was a raw whisper, each word sticking in his throat like cold tar. They're talking to me, Sarah. He rasped, the sound of his own words swallowed by the oppressive quiet. They're trapped. I had to know. The finality in his tone was absolute, a vow carved from a primal dread. He persuaded Mike to join him on a 3-day voyage aboard a rented trawler into the frigid, slate-gray Pacific.
The moment they reached the coordinates, every piece of equipment erupted into chaos. A deafening roar of static filled the cabin, thick with the sharp scent of ozone. Then, cutting through the noise, the KPSD signal came in with impossible clarity, as if the transmitter was right beside them. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and damp decay. Sam's ragged breaths rasped through the speaker, each one hitching with primal dread. His trembling voice finally broke the static. He's here! The new listener, on the water. The final whisper was a cold, sticky warning. You shouldn't have come, John. This wasn't a broadcast. It was a beacon, and you followed its call all the way home. A metallic scent, like ozone and old iron, hangs in the damp air. The only sound is the gentle, persistent lap of water against the hull. A thick, unnatural fog rolled in, silent and swift, swallowing the world in seconds. The temperature plummeted, and the air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and ozone. Their radio blared a 1940s love song, horribly distorted, the melody warping into something unsettling. Then, through the oppressive gray, a light appeared, not from their boat, but somewhere out in the void. A relentless beam sweeps through the murk, carving the night. Below its vigil, the impossible emerges. The spectral geometry of a town. Salt rot and cold iron hang in the damp air. The piers stand silent, their timbers groaning a low, wet protest with each swell. Clapboard houses stood stark against the twilight, their windows dark and vacant. Along the shore, silhouettes of people stood perfectly still, facing the water as if waiting. The air carried the faint scent of ozone and salt, thick with an unnatural stillness. Mike. No, this isn't real. Turn it around. John, turn it around. The air inside the car grew thick with the sharp scent of ozone and the damp, earthy smell of flooding soil. It's not a town. His final words tore through the static, a raw declaration that froze the very air in John's ears. It's the moment. The transmission fractures into a single, piercing note. A ship's horn fused with 100 petrified screams, then absolute quiet. It is the moment we are trapped within. The air grows dense and metallic, tasting of ozone and cold iron. The command, "Get out!" echoes, then is severed, and primal dread solidifies in the chest. Then, John's found footage begins to play in the dead silence. The boat drifted into the fog, the camera shuddering as it captured the ghostly town's outline. Then, on the distant shore, the silhouettes began to turn, one by one, their heads rotating with unnatural slowness toward the vessel. The air grew thick with the scent of salt rot and wet earth, while a faint scratching sound whispered across the water's surface. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but the boat continued its silent drift toward those waiting figures. Back in the present, the dim studio light catches the host's face as he leans forward, the story's weight evident in his expression. 3 days later, the Coast Guard discovered Mike's trawler adrift. Its engines were completely dead, and the radio had fused into a solid, melted mass of plastic and wire. A sharp, electrical ozone smell hung in the air, mixed with the metallic tang of fear. Mike was found catatonic, his eyes fixed on something only he could see. He hasn't spoken a word since. John Miller was never found. If this was, the host presses play on John's recorder. John's voice crackles through the static, thick with terror. His whisper is ragged, choked with desperation. Sarah, if you get this, I'm sorry. I'm on the pier. I can see the studio window. A pause hangs in the air before he whispers, Sam is. He's waving at me. He's smiling. They all are. The music begins. A gentle melodic swell. It's a perfect 72 degrees in Perdition sound. The population is just right. The recording ends abruptly, leaving only a hollow emptiness. Then, a damp chill seeped into the room, carrying the faint, metallic scent of ozone. The host leans forward, his voice a low, urgent whisper to the camera. The KPSD signal still broadcasts every night. With a powerful enough receiver, you can tune into it. The advertisements, the weather forecasts, the forgotten songs, Sam's friendly voice. But sometimes, if the conditions are just right, if you're alone, late at night, the static will clear, and you'll hear something new underneath the old broadcast. A second layer, a modern voice, unnaturally cheerful, reading a fishing report for waters that don't exist. The host's eyes are deadly serious. So tonight, when you're scanning the dial and hear a voice from a town you can't find on any map, don't listen too closely. As the final notes of the music began to fade, a whisper, thin and spectral, threaded through the air. It wasn't a sound you heard so much as felt. A cold, dry breath against the nape of the neck. The words were a secret, shared only with the void. We're always looking for new listeners.
And then, only the dark remained.